Most teams have a truth problem more than they have a strategy problem. This is when smart, capable, well intentioned people sit in meetings and they tiptoe around the things that everyone can see. And it's not because they're dishonest, but they're trying to be professional. Welcome to The Meaningful Leader. This is the March edition where we explore the content from our March newsletter. And this month, it's about building a culture in a way where challenge isn't something that's risky, but it is absolutely required. When disagreement doesn't turn into drama or politics because you've done the right things in the right way. You've created rules, reps, and consequences. They all play a role. Later in this edition, we're going to explore something that I call the wash the floors trap. We're also going to run a signal versus noise audit to expose where your attention is being stolen. And then we'll land on a question most leaders avoid until it's too late. But first, let's solve the question I have been hearing frequently. And that question is, how do you build a culture where challenge is safe, expected, and productive? Because here's the trap. Most leaders try to make people comfortable with conflict. And I think that's the wrong goal because comfort can create avoidance. What you want is normalization plus structure because safety just doesn't come from good vibes. It comes from rules that people can follow when those moments of pressure hit. Think about it this way. If challenge is optional, only two kinds of people are going to do it. It's the reckless and the brave. Because everyone else is going to stay quiet and then complain later in the parking lot or when they call their colleagues later on their way home. So let's stop treating candor like a personality trait and start treating it like a job requirement. And there are things that you can do as a leader to create that. So I want you to consider this 5-part system to help you install what I call a steel-toed boots culture. This is where people are allowed to step on toes without breaking relationships, because this is what I've seen great executive teams, great teams along the middle band of leadership really create exceptional results. And here's the first part of the system. Make challenge a job requirement, not a personality trait. And it helps if you say this part out loud to your team. Look, if you disagree, you speak here in this room because your job is not to be nice. Your job is to make all of us smarter. If you say something like that, that single expectation removes any social ambiguity where people freeze when they're not sure what the culture is actually going to reward. And use this sentence or something like it with your team. Silence is not an agreement. If you see a risk, then you owe us your voice to help us see it in a different way. Find your way to deliver that sentence, but make sure it's in your space. That's the first part. Here's the second part of the system. Install rules of engagement that will survive pressure. You see, most teams rely on values like be respectful. And the problem is these often collapse the moment there's ego, hierarchy, or time pressure. Well, don't get me wrong. I know values are incredibly important. You still need to install rules of engagement. A small set of people can remember during these moments. Here are a few to consider. Challenge the idea, not the person. Or bring evidence and examples, not opinions. No drive-by criticism. If you poke a hole, offer an alternative. Here's another one. Say it in the room, not after. There's no triangulation. Another important one is to disagree hard. Then you commit once this is decided. Now, these are examples of rules that can help you develop a culture that's more steel-toed boots. Believe me, when you get it right, people can step on toes without breaking the relationships when you get the right set of rules that people understand and they can align on. That's the second one. The third one really works. It's unbelievably simple, but most people don't do it. So my advice, don't be like most people. Here's the third one. Give everyone on the team a simple script to deal with challenge. You see, I don't think people avoid challenges because they're weak. They avoid it simply because they don't have a language that's clean, fast, and non-dramatic. So your job as a leader can be to empower them to start with a script. And here's a script to consider that you can play with. My intent is, the issue I see is, here's what I'm basing it on, the risk is, my proposal is, what I need from you is. If you follow something simple like that, or even just base your communication off playing with the important elements in that script, it can be very helpful. For example, I'm going to just play with one here. Hey, my intent is speed, not criticism. The issue I see is that we're assuming customers will adopt this without training, and I'm basing it on last quarter's rollout. The risk is churn and support overload. So my proposal is a 2-week pilot with onboarding. What I need from you is permission to delay the full launch until the pilot results are in. Now, that's just a random example of how this script can play out, but take this script, adapt it as it's needed with your team, but give them something to play with, a Mad Libs that they can add the content into to make challenge more effective and easier to access. Okay, this fourth one that I'm going to take you through takes a little bit of work, but once you get it, your team will nail it. It will be a part of the system. I want you to build reps inside your meetings, not wait for offsites. If you want culture change, you need to stop outsourcing it to simply training or offsite days. Don't get me wrong, training works. And when it comes to offsites, I've led many offsites with leaders who create massive value. But culture is built in the recurring moments, those weekly meetings, the decision points, the debriefs. So consider installing reps that are small and repeatable rituals inside your team. And there are some that you can easily build into your weekly system. Things like, some people call it a red team 10. This is where one or a few people are assigned to stress test a plan for 10 minutes. Let's stress test it before we move forward. The next is something that I've called a steel-toed round. We've got a decision, we've got something happening, but before an ultimate decision is made, everyone names at least one risk and why they've flagged it. Or a more common one is to host a pre-mortem. Okay, if we move down this path, 6 months later, if it fails, why would this fail? This is a less intrusive way of engaging your team in conflict, but also some massive risk reduction. Think about it this way. You're not creating conflict. You're actually using these methods to create competence, and disagreement becomes a type of muscle memory that your team starts to value. Okay, the last one in this system, very important. Protect your challengers and shut down the punishers. This is, in the end, this is the true test. If someone challenges and then gets punished by their peers with eye rolls, defensiveness, or freezing them out, then I'm telling you, your culture will go silent. You can't say you want candor while you tolerate social penalties for that candor when it shows up. So here are some things, if it does show up, if you see some punishment start to creep in, here's some things that you can do in the moment. Well, first, in the moment that challengers show up. First, praise the behavior publicly. Hey, that challenge might have saved us a lot of rework. This one can be hard, especially when you do just want to move fast, but your job as a leader is to ensure that the culture creates the conditions you want, which means even though you might be frustrated, praise the behavior of the challenger and seek to back that up with a benefit. Next, interrupt punishment in real time. Hey, let this person finish, no eye rolls, engage the point. You can name that people are frustrated. Let's remember, this could be important. So interrupt punishment in real time. Call out when triangulation is happening. You might say something like, hey, if you have a concern, bring it to the room. You cannot leave this room if you've got a concern and you haven't articulated it. That means you're the problem, not the solution. If someone starts to punish it, if someone starts to shut down, then there might be a private correction that's required. Hey, when you shut that down, you risk teaching the team it's unsafe to think out loud. That has to stop. What are some of the things that we can do instead? Now, these are some strategies. As always, manipulate it so that it fits your team. But here's the whole model. Make challenge required, give a solid base of rules, give them a script to work off of. When challenge is required, make it easy for them. Find a system to build your reps in meetings and protect challengers while confronting the punishers. If you're wondering where to start, don't start with motivation. Start with the rules and the reps so people can experience it. Okay, before we move on, I want to shift lenses because leadership failure rarely comes from what you don't know. It comes from what you're certain about that isn't true. So consider this a thought diversity moment, a pattern that looks like commitment, but can quietly poison a team. So here's a different way to think. Beware of the thing I call the wash the floors trap. You've probably heard it. Maybe you've even loved hearing it. Someone wants in your team or your organization so badly that they say something like, I'll do anything. I'll wash the floors. I'll take scraps. I'll grind 24/7. I just want to be a part of this thing. When it happens, leaders eat it up because it sounds like hunger, loyalty, humility. But here's what it often is: idealization. And the hard thing about idealization is that it's not commitment, it's in fact a pedestal. And here's why it's an issue. Whenever someone puts anyone or anything on a pedestal, there's only one way to go, and that's down. And the reality is every business has warts. Every leader has rough edges. Every culture has contradictions, and there's always a mess behind the curtain. Now, that mess might look different, but there's always a mess. So when someone joins or wants to join with starry eyes and a blind belief that your company just gets it or your company is better than the one that they came from, don't just assume that you're building a trusted team, because you might just be building a future betrayal. And that fall is predictable. People may feel like they're getting betrayed when they come in, because if they come in based on that pedestal, then what happens the first time they see the mess? They don't say, oh, this is normal. They'll likely say something like, I can't believe you're like this. And they likely won't confront you directly. Oftentimes they'll just get quiet, they'll get weird, and they'll start narrating stories to themselves. Or maybe they'll flip the script and decide, oh, you've changed. Meanwhile, nothing changed. They just finally saw reality. So consider it this way. The move isn't to recruit harder. The different way to think in this case is, how do you disillusion people faster? And I know that sounds crazy, but stop selling your dream like it's Disneyland and tell the truth in a way that it's a rugged commitment. If someone says, hey, they'll wash the floors to get in, fine. But here's the real question. Can they handle conflict? Can they handle ambiguity? What about imperfect decisions, hard feedback? Like, can they really handle hard feedback? Or what about a rapid pace? And what about the days that you're not at your best? Because I don't know about you, but there are days where I'm not at my best and I may not respond. Heck, there may be a stretch of days where I'm not at my best. I know I've certainly experienced that. Can they handle that? Because if they can't handle that, the floor washing promise is irrelevant. So what do you do if you can sense that floor washing risk? Well, one of the best filters I've found is to spend as much energy explaining why they shouldn't work with you, just as much as you do pitching why they should. Because the right people don't need a fantasy, but they'll sure appreciate an accurate blueprint. They want to see how the sausage is actually made here. And after they see it, do they still want in? The ones who want the pedestal, well, let them walk early before they take you down with them, before they make you believe that something's actually wrong here. Because, hey, there's a difference between seeking to get better and improve. If you're listening to this podcast, you're probably already on that path. But one of the biggest barriers that prevents that is starting to believe that there's something fundamentally wrong. Because if that's where you're focusing your effort, then you won't be able to have the creativity and the resourcefulness to focus on getting it right if you're drowning in the fact that there's something fundamentally wrong. So, quick gut check. Are you hiring someone who can handle reality, or someone who just loves the idea of being on your team? Okay, it's time for the laboratory. This is the part of the show where we identify a real experiment, not just a motivational idea. And this episode's experiment is the signal versus noise audit. If you've been listening to this podcast, you know I've said this before. Most leaders I work with don't have a time problem. What they do have is a discernment problem. The issue with many leaders is not that your calendar is jammed full. It's often because it's unfiltered. So if you're connecting the dots and seeing yourself a little bit in this setup, then here's an experiment that I'm telling you is worth running for 1 week. You don't need to fix your workload. All I want you to do is measure it. I want you to track every attention hijack. This is the meetings, all the pings and emails. This is the quick questions that pop into your office, all of the surprise fires, and all the stuff you didn't plan, but you still surrendered and said yes to. At the end of the day, and at the end of the week, you label each one of these items as honestly as possible into one of 3 buckets. The first one is signal. The signal is these are the items that popped in that actually created movement towards what matters. They have fundamentally impacted your priorities. This is the signal. The next bucket is the noise. The things that came into your field of view, your space, your attention that felt really urgent, but actually changed very little. This is the noise. And then the third bucket, distraction. It took you out, it forced you to context switch, and it added no net value. It added nothing. If you track all of your distractions, all of the things that took your focus and attention, and drop it into these 3 buckets after 1 week, complete that. But here's the thing. Do not change anything. Do not optimize. Just seek to collect the truth. Because there's value in seeing the pattern, and patterns show up fast. You'll see who's training you to react to them. You'll see which meetings are really just theater, and you'll see where your best energy is getting traded for busy work. Because once you can see it, once you can see it in a way that makes sense, then you can start turning maybe into a clean, powerful, and strategic no. Because as I've said to my coaching clients many, many times, the leaders who win are not the busiest, but they sure are the clearest. That is an experiment worth running this month, which brings us to a deeper layer. Because if you get brutally honest about where your attention goes, then you eventually bump into a bigger question, the more important questions. And boy, oh boy, this month do I have a great question for you to ponder. And that is, where are you winning on the outside, but losing on the inside? Another way to look at it is to consider, if the applause in your environment stopped tomorrow, would you still choose what you're doing now? Here's the dangerous part. Everything might be working. You're performing, you're producing, you're keeping your part of the machine running, you're getting results, and in fact, you're getting recognized for them. And that's great. But what you have to consider is also to understand that that's also how people can get trapped. We call it SOS, same old stuff. This is when the external scorecard can look really great, but something internally quietly starts to shrink. So when you steep in a question like this, look for the trade that you're making. Where are you choosing the things that are familiar over what's actually true? Because it's profitable, it's safe, and it's predictable. We love predictability. Another one is, where are you protecting your status, your certainty, and approval? And then the deeper layer to this question is, what is this version of success costing you? In energy, relationships, aliveness, fulfillment. Let all of this sit with you, because this is a question worth pondering. Okay, BTW, by the way, guess what spring is? It's workshop season. It's a natural reset for teams. It's a time to reinforce a culture of continuous learning, invest in practical leadership development. And at Level 52, aside from our award-winning programs, the Accelerated Leader Program, our peer learning community, we do offer workshop solutions designed to build real capability, not just inspiration. And formats range from bite-size 2-hour virtual learning sessions, lunch and learns, to half-day, full-day, and multi-day experiences. If you're looking to build momentum with your leaders this season, workshops are a powerful place to start. And even if workshops may not be on your bingo card right now, there is an April free learning event. We have an upcoming session called Lighten Your Workload while developing your team. It's focused on practical delegation skills that build capacity and free up your time without lowering your standards. Now, Gavin Harrison and Kathy Soroka. Kathy is CEO of Gold Ray Class. She's also a Level 52 coach and facilitator, brilliant leader. She's going to share simple, actionable approaches that leaders can apply immediately. Now, this runs on April 16th, 11 a.m. Mountain Time. Be there or be square. And rather than be square, be a triangle. Because if you look at our logo, that's it. And triangles are incredibly powerful. Hey, that is the newsletter edition of this Executive Commute episode. If you've lasted this long, congratulations. You are a rock star. Make this month meaningful, and I'll see you next month when we dive into more content.